Hinduism and Buddhism, an historical sketch by Sir Charles Elliot. Origin and growth of Hinduism. The earliest product of Indian literature, the Rig Veda, contains the songs of Aryan invaders who were beginning to make a home in India. Though no longer nomads, they had little local sentiment. New cities had arisen comparable with Babylon or Thebes, and we hear little of ancient kingdoms or dynasties. Many of the gods who occupied so much of their thoughts were personifications of natural forces such as the sun, wind, and fire, worshipped without temples or images, and hence more indefinite in form, habitation, and attributes than the deities of Assyria or Egypt. The idea of a struggle between good and evil was not prominent. In Persia, where the original pantheon was almost the same as that of the Veda, this idea produced monotheism. The minor deities became angels and the chief deity a lord of hosts who wages a successful struggle against an independent but still inferior spirit of evil. But in India, the spirits of good and evil are thus not personified. The world is regarded less as a battlefield of principles than as a theater for the display of natural forces. No one god assumes lordship over the others, but they are all seen to be interchangeable, mere names and aspects of something which is greater than any god. Indian religion is commonly regarded as the offspring of an Aryan religion brought into India by invaders from the north and modified by the contact with Dravidian civilization. The materials at our disposal hardly permit us to take any other point of view, for the literature of the Vedic Aryans is relatively ancient and full, and we have no information about the old Dravidians comparable with it. But were our knowledge less one-sided, we might see that it would be more correct to describe Indian religion as a Dravidian religion stimulated and modified by the ideas of Aryan invaders. For the greatest deities of Hinduism, Shiva, Krishna, Rama, Durga, and some of its essential doctrines, such as metempsychosis and divine incarnations, are either totally unknown to the Veda or obscurely adumbrated in it. The chief characteristics of mature Indian religion are characteristics of an area, not of a race, and they are not characteristics of a religion in Persia, Greece, or other Aryan lands. Some writers explain Indian religion as the worship of nature spirits, others as the veneration of the dead, but it is a mistake to see in the religion of any large area only one origin or impulse. The principles which in a learned form are championed today by various professors represents thoughts which were creative in early times. In ancient India, there were some whose minds turned to their ancestors and dead friends, while others saw divinity in the wonders of storm, spring, and harvest. Krishna is in the main a product of hero worship, but Shiva has no such historical basis. He personifies the powers of birth and death, of change, decay, and rebirth. In fact, all we include in the prosaic word nature. Assuredly, both these lines of thought, the worship of nature and of the dead, and perhaps many others existed in ancient India. By the time of the Upanishads, that is about 600 BC, we trace three clear currents in the Indian religion which have persisted until the present day. The first is ritual. This became extraordinarily complicated, but retained its primitive and magical character. The object of an ancient Indian sacrifice was partly to please the gods, but still more to coerce them by certain acts and formulae. Secondly, all Hindus lay stress on asceticism and self-mortification as a means of purifying the soul and obtaining supernatural powers. They have a conviction that every man who is in earnest about religion, and even every student of philosophy, must follow a discipline at least to the extent of observing chastity and eating only to support life. Severer austerities give clearer insight into divine mysteries and control over forces of nature. Europeans are apt to condemn Eastern asceticism as a waste of life, but it has had an important moral effect. The weakness of Hinduism, though not of Buddhism, is that ethics have so small a place in its fundamental conceptions. Its deities are not identified with the moral law, and the saint is above that law. But this dangerous doctrine is corrected by the dogma, which is also a popular conviction, that a saint must be a passionless ascetic. In India, no religious teacher can expect a hearing until he begins by renouncing the world. Thirdly, the deepest conviction of Hindus in all ages is that salvation and happiness are attainable by knowledge. The corresponding phrases in Sanskrit are perhaps less purely intellectual than our word and contain some idea of effort and emotion. He who knows God attains to God. Nay, he is God. Though Hinduism has no one creed, yet there are at least two doctrines held by nearly all who call themselves Hindus. One may be described as polytheistic pantheism. Most Hindus are apparently polytheists, that is to say, they venerate the images of several deities or spirits. Yet most are monotheists in the sense that they address their worship to one god. But this monotheism has almost always a pantheistic tinge. The Hindu does not say the gods of the heathen are but idols, but it is the Lord who made the heavens, he says. Some schools would prefer to say that no human language applied to the Godhead can be correct, and that all ideas of a personal ruler of the world are at best but relative truths. This ultimate ineffable Godhead is called the Brahman. The second doctrine is commonly known as metempsychosis, the transmigration of souls or reincarnation, the last name being the most accurate. In detail, the doctrine assumes various forms since different views are held about the relation of soul to body. But the essence of all is the same, namely that a life does not begin at birth or end at death, but it is a link in an infinite series of lives, each of which is conditioned and determined by the acts done in previous existences. Karma. Animal, human, and divine existences may all be links in the chain. A man's deed, if good, may exalt him to the heavens, if evil, may degrade him to life as a beast. Since all lives, even in heaven, must come to an end, happiness is not to be sought in heaven or earth. The common aspiration of the religious Indian is for deliverance, that is, release from the rounds of birth and repose in some changeless state called by names such as union with Brahman, nirvana, and many others.